Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's. Proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Shalom.
Ruben Bressler.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Great, how you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, it's, it's rare that this Top 10... or a top 10 was so painful. This one was really like picking your favorite kids. This was really tough. Like I kind of stewed over this one. Ruben, I know you took you a long time as well. Like this one was really difficult for me.
Yeah, I had to kill a lot of darlings with this list. Typically we have to eliminate cards, right, to get to our top 10s. When it's people, when it's entire bodies of work, it's really painful.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But at the very least, you know that it's going to lead to some passionate discussion on YouTube and Reddit, and that's what we want. We want people to, we kind of want you to feel a certain way. We don't want to cover all of the bases, and I feel like it's more of a problem if people just agree with us, or they're like, yep, there's those only 10 out there. And so I like when people say the whatabouts and how could yous, and respectfully, of course. And so we're going to get a lot of that this week.
I can only imagine, because the artists I left behind, I was just like, oh, there is such a good argument for like 5 other artists than the ones I chose in my top 10.
Yeah, there are so many artists that I was like, man, this could very easily be high in my top 10. Not just top 10, but top 5, top 3. And it was difficult.
Well,
so these lists are not definitive, just so we're clear.
I mean, they're definitive to us, and that's about as definitive as we're ever going to get.
Even then, it's like...
Things change. They're fluid. We make this video in another 3 years, or whatever. Maybe the lists are different. But that said, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we didn't choose as one of our top 10 legendary creatures. Ruben?
This week's honorable mention comes from, I'm pretty sure I've met Mildy Vane in real life. He's a member of the Heavy Meta crew, and he had a comment on Twitter that I thought was just spectacularly accurate, which was, I'm still in shock that Geist of St. Traft didn't make it onto anyone's list. I thought it was a shoe-in for Ruben's list. It hits all of his normal qualities to make his lists. It won a Pro Tour, it came in third in another, it sees play in many formats, and it's in the Moto Cube. Disappointed face. With the colon and the slash.
Wow.
And that's from Mildy Vane. And yeah, I at this point I can only apologize. It did hit all the marks for me. It's got a promo printing. It won a Pro Tour. It has great success in Standard. Yeah, that's just, at this point I can only apologize.
We had a... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we had a surprising number of people that were upset we didn't include one of the Thalias. Sure. And my response to that is, I don't like her.
Right. Aaron has an excuse.
I'm never happy to see Thalia. So she definitely has the cred, but I'm never happy to see her across the table.
I was pleasantly surprised by the lack of people calling me out for not having Zergo Bellstriker on my list, because it won a Pro Tour and it's right in my wheelhouse as a red 2-power 1-drop. So.
Yeah, and those Thalia was very close to my list. Geist of St. Traft was one of my final cuts. It's tough. All times. It's
difficult.
Tough.
Yeah.
But that said, we're going to go ahead and get started here with our number 10. Now, note, for those who haven't listened to the show before, the way it works is we have a third party who looks over our list and lets us know if we have the same selections or higher, or our selections are higher on someone else's list. So that's why we know. Because we had some questions on that in the comments last week.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Artists. Whew. It's hard to know exactly where to start. I mean, seriously, like it's you have the option of going very historical, right? Which were the most important in terms of their impact on the game, if they were there from the beginning, if they had some incredible cards, or the way they shaped things. Well, this is one of those where it was there at the beginning. It was one of the artists who shaped what Magic looks like as we experience it, as we were thinking of the fantasy and the sort of the high level stuff. And I got to meet this artist at the Cold Snap pre-release, which was cool because that pre-release was terrible. And it was like one of the highlights of like one of the most awful, pre-releases ever.
That's a low bar. Like you were the highlight of the Cold Snap pre-release.
Yeah,
it was cool.
That's not a difficult thing to reach. Yeah.
But, when you have the artist who has helped define some of the most ridiculously awesome creatures in Magic, when you have some that have been there from the beginning, so they have these incredible pieces that you can, like, one of the criteria for me was, like, if I name the piece, you should be able to see it in your head. If you can't see it in your head, I don't think it was worth nominating, because if I say Chaos Orb, you see, sure. Chaos Orb, right? Like, you get it. Like, and Mark Tadine has had such an incredible career. Did Emrakul the Eons Torn, for God's sake. I mean, Fireball. He did Fireball. Like, it's just, there's no end to, like, Jazam Jin, I think, is probably my star sort of gem piece from him. Because that artwork, when I was first starting Magic, was just so cool. I'd never seen anything like it. And Wizards was putting it on everything, putting it on binders and promotional material. And Mark's work has just spanned almost the entirety of Magic.
Absolutely,
He doesn't do that much anymore, but he did kind of come back for Rise of the Eldrazi, and he made Emrakul and How We Know It. I mean, Navineral's Disc. I mean, I can kind of just go on and on here. He made Soul Ring. Mark Tadine illustrated Soul Ring. Like, you just the pedigree is just everywhere. So that's my number 10, and I think his work stands for itself.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a excellent choice. He's got so many. Another feature that I really like about the artists, especially on my list, but Mark Tadine certainly qualifies, is he has things that he's a specialist in, and I really like Mark Tadine's like tendrils of things, as seen on things like Forgotten Ancient, and obviously Emrakul and Dreamcatcher. He does like tendrils of animals really well.
Right.
And he's got so many iconic pieces from way back in the day, obviously, like you mentioned, Juzam Jin and things like Leviathan, and then obviously tournament pedigree cards as well. He's got so many things to choose from, and he's been around forever. My personal favorite, obviously, is Necropotence. That's just so iconic, and you can't even explain what's going on in the art or why it makes sense, but it just does. Yeah. And that's another feature is that he's able to make his art his own without having it even have to make sense.
And he came back in Dominaria with the Antiquities War.
Ah, nice. Which if you turn it sideways, it looks like two people clinking glasses, which I really like. But I like the art anyway. It's a nice rollout scroll. That's a great choice.
So yeah, between Time Twister and Time Vault, I mean, like, the guy made a
Time Twister. Oh my god,
it's so good. That's
Time
Ruben.
Twister, and the other honorable Power 9 of Time Vault.
Exactly, Ruben. What's your number 10?
So my number 10 is a little bit off the reservation. This artist has not done a ton of pieces of art. I think that she's only done about 30, but half of them are arts that are really iconic and stick out in my head for how unique they are and how interesting they are and how unique among Magic artists they are. She did the cycle of the masterpiece friendly fetchlands. So Bloodstained Mire and Flooded Strand, among others. She also did Lava Claw Reaches, but the art that really sticks out in my head of Veronique Maynard is Demystify from Rise of the Eldrazi, which is kind of a garbage card. Like, nobody cares about that card in particular, but the art is just so evocative. There's such interesting things happening in the colors and the movement of the card. It was used again in M12. I like artists where you can see the paint strokes. This is like an impressionist kind of styling. Veronique is almost cubist in her style. And she's also worked on lots of video games, from Far Cry 4 to the Dishonored series. And she's also famous for that Stargate Mountain from the Zendikar block, the sort of archway mountain that I really like. So even though this is an artist that, only has about 30 pieces, half of them are just, stick out really clearly in my head. And I think that I wanted to give that a little bit of a pedestal.
It's really interesting. I mean, when they don't really have a lot of sort of new or modern pieces, it's like, wow, like don't you like what she did a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Ready to bring that back? And there's more of that. I mean, like Wizards themselves can pick and choose whatever artist they want, basically among the fantasy spectrum, which is cool for Wizards. They can literally just be like, "Hey, you want to make a Magic card?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, I want to make a Magic card because Magic's awesome." That said, Aaron, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is one of the most refreshing faces in the artist circuit right now. I met him a couple GPs ago. I picked up a bunch of zombie tokens from him. His zombie tokens happen to be zombies on motorcycles. Done in very like a 50s, 60s vintage style, and every time I play them, I just go vroom vroom because it means my zombies are coming for you. He already has a great portfolio, but if he continues the way that he has been, we very well might look at him the way that we talk about the Mark Tadines and things of that nature. One of my favorite pieces by him happened recently, Accursed Horde, which was sort of the first-person perspective of a zombie kind of ripping a necklace off of a victim, which was really dope. He also recently did a very curvaceous take on Platinum Angel, which I thought was incredible. And he was also recently given the opportunity to do the art for a beloved reprint in Llanowar Elves. My number 10 is Victor Adame Minguez. And Victor also watches the show, so hey, Victor, I see you, Poppy. So yeah, I love everything about Victor's style. I think he's so refreshing. I love his take on things. I love his attitude, his personality. He's a huge dog aficionado. For those who don't know, he lives in Mexico with like a dozen dogs or something. He's always talking about his dogs or whatever. He works very hard. He's just a very likable guy. He's known for playing EDH at his table when he goes to GPs, so that's always fun to do. And he's just an artist I really root for, and I love his take on things. When there's so many artists out there, there are some artists that kind of start to it does start to kind of look the same after a while. I know that's a piece of criticism that's kind of come up recently in recent sets, but I feel like Victor's pieces in particular always stand out, and I'm never disappointed to see his art on something.
Yeah. He just had a piece in Dominaria from Shalai, Voice of Plenty.
Absolutely. Come through, Shillelagh. I see you.
Hey.
Yeah.
They've gone to Victor for a couple of the sort of not for the joke promotional cards. He did Nerf War and Thopter Pie Network, so it seems that they really enjoy his humor in addition to his styling. I mean, he's certainly capable as a traditional artist. I think one of the most beautiful pieces of his is the Masterpiece series Platinum Angel. I really enjoy that as well. The movement and the shadowing, particularly the metal pieces. You can see a lot of that in not Kamigawa block, Kaladesh block. The pieces that Hazaret is wearing on Hazaret's Undying Fury is another good example of this. Really good with using light and reflection in his art as well.
And see, the sheet is really what drew me to his Platinum Angel, where it's like, we think of wings in very conventional terms of like feathers and raw, but it looks like just a piece of cloth. But it's so, the way that it hangs and the way that it clasps to the Platinum Angel is really what blew me away. First I was blown away by the body, but then when I saw the way the cloak was done, I was like, that is so just unlike anything we've ever seen before, and the package was just delightful.
I mean, you can't, for me, you got to mention Atraxa, Praetor's voice. That was just a knockout, ridiculous monster piece. Totally incredible. Absolutely killed it.
Getting a reprint too, much needed.
Yeah, that's $100+ commander deck or whatever, which is cool. Things are worth money. It's a collectible game, whatever. That said, move here to number 9. Oh man. My number 9 is more of a traditional artist in terms of they work more of a traditional sort of oils and stuff like that. And he's he's a stone master, like actual factual master. This is a guy whose work I've been able to see close up. And when you do, it's just, there's something to see. Like, we've seen the cards and we've seen even like high res art, right? But when you see something in person, when they had that art show at GP Vegas last year, I mean, it was just incredible to be able to see some of these awesome pieces right in front of you, and just the way that, they scanned it and they did the best they could and color correct and whatever. But like, I was able to stand there and be like, wow, I can see, I can see some of his work. For example, and the big one they had, there was a full piece with Nissa, Steward of Elements, was right there because Howard Lyon does amazing work. Just absolutely, like Angel of Light Alabaster, is that right?
Yeah. I think so.
You know,
Flight
which
Alabaster.
also Angel of Finality, which kind of was part of the story. Yeah, Flight Alabaster rather. So Angel of Flight Alabaster, Angel of Finale. I mean, there's a whole bunch of pieces that you can kind of look to. But you know, I mean, the cathartic reunion, like you know, the emotion and the power that he's able to sort of get across in his work is absolutely fantastic. And the guy's great. Like he was fantastic and gracious.
He's just a treat. Yeah, he when I was doing spell slinging up in Seattle at Grand Prix Seattle, he came up to Dana Fisher and said, "Hey, I did the art for the Nissa you're cosplaying as. I'll trade you a print for one of your tokens."
Oh,
and that was just adorable. He has his Facebook is a delight as well. He has like these awesome art get-togethers where they do like speed paints, and in 3 hours he can just make a human, just like a church in this 1500s quality portrait. The verve and vitality that he's able to breathe life into these pieces of his, not to mention how adorable Harmless Offering is, which I think
I was just about to say that, yeah, and just the subtlety of it. You know, he does a really good job of distracting you with this very like, you know, precocious cat that if you look really closely, there are just so many Easter eggs. You have the nick or the cut on the guy's finger, implying that this cat might be a little vicious, and then of course there's the tail, and it would have been very easy to, I think, swing the pendulum more to the creepy side or the Eldrazi side, but it's so subtle, and there's just so many little things in that artwork where you're like, it all adds up to an experience, quite frankly.
I mean, there was definitely more than one of the reasons that I was so excited about Time Reversal was that the artwork was just amazing.
Yes.
It's so colorful and energetic and powerful, and it had a purple planet. That means purple's coming to Magic. It's purple man. It's happening. That's a thing. But yeah, and also if people are looking for his work, check out Surrender Your Thoughts. That thing is unbelievably creepy. This was one of the schemes, as it were, from Arch Enemy, and it's like a tree growing out of somebody's face. It's crazy. But Howard is incredible. Ruben, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is an artist that I think it's tough to say that he has a signature style, but there is certainly a class of card that he is particularly known for. If you need a guy that does wings, does angel wings, does spectacular, big, like the heroes have arrived style wings, you want Johann Voss to do them. So Johann Voss is my number 9. In particular, I think people remember Gift of Orzhova.
Yes.
For Johann Voss, but he also did Restoration Angel, and a lot of those sort of hopeful, winged characters. But if you look at the rest of his body of work, it's not all, sunshine and rainbows. He's got some dark stuff as well. The Avacyn Restored, not Avacyn Restored, the Shadows over Innistrad Fiery Temper is quite dark and pretty terrifying. In the most recent set, Evra Halcyon Witness is another of those sort of low-angle pieces that is able to create grandeur and depth. And his command of color is just kind of spectacular. I mean, if you look at a card like Commander's Authority, it's really tough to get that lens flare, basically. How do you do that? Like, how are you able to create that illusion with just paper? Paper and paint and maybe your computer, and compare that to Phyrexian Metamorph, where he's able to create the illusion of metal and reflection and using that light and shadow and sort of comparison there. I just really like everything that he does, and I think is well deserving of recognition.
He also did. Oh, sorry. He also did On Sarah's Wings as sort of a callback to Gift of Orzhova. And, I said this in the set review, too. I appreciate how Dominaria has changed the way that they do light. Obviously there's the Cabal and there's sort of the Benalians. And so it'd be very easy to just do sun, moon, called a day. But you'll notice throughout Dominaria, they filter the sun through this prismatic lens, through this stained glass lens. And, you see that with Sarah's Wings, where, again, they could have just done sun, angel. But it's like, no, we're going to give you rainbows. We're going to give you color. We're going to give you texture. And so just kind of, rethinking the way that we think of light and angelic things.
He's a shoe-in for the stained glass motif of the Benalish Knights of Dominaria, for sure.
Topin Freeblade is one of my favorites of his. It reminds me very much of sort of Commander's Authority, where you're like, wow, somehow you're able to make me like squint at something that isn't producing light. That's really
Right.
strange. You know, it's
Yeah.
great. It's an incredible, you know, sort of gift that he has.
He's able to command color and light in a way that few artists can, like Angelic Destiny, Azor's Elocutor's both have the angel staircase lights coming through, reflecting off sort of the dust that's in the air. Speaking of Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, he also did the Thalia with that epic upshot that he's so well known for, sort of making those characters feel more heroic.
Right. I mean, Restoration Angel, Mentor of the Meek is another one that has incredible sort of shadows and light coming through, which is awesome. So that's fantastic. Aaron, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is my first hire. It's higher on someone else's list.
Fair enough, because we're going to move on here to number 8, which I don't have because I also have one higher on someone else's list. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My hire's the only hire, to be fair. It's the only hire.
Aaron, save us.
Higher on
I do have a number 8. The best way I could describe my number 8 is he's a very well-rounded artist. You know, we're probably going to talk about artists who have niches. You know, we talked about, you know, Johan being great at Angel Wings. You know, we're going to talk about others, you know, throughout the show. But one thing I really appreciate about this artist is that he seems to be able to do it all. Like, when I look at everything he's done, I don't really see a pattern there. And maybe it's just me not having an art critic's eye, but he's done black cards, he's done red cards, he's done white cards, he's done multicolored cards, and they're all fantastic. Like, I don't really feel like there's anything he can't do, and I feel like that's saying a lot. He's also very hardworking. He's done a lot of work on Dungeons and Dragons as well. I met him at Grand Prix Vegas last year, where I picked up an Olivia Voldaren print because hello. He's also known for such cards as Elsbeth Sun's Champion, and my personal favorite, Phyrexian Crusader. My number 8 is Eric Deschamps. So I just love everything Eric does. Like I said, I think he's just so well-rounded, and when I look at everything he does, I'm just like, is there anything you can't do? Like, when you look at that catalog, when you look at that resume, there's no weak links there. They're all just strong entries, and you know, that's really hard to find, you know, in an artist's resume. You know, normally there's like a stinker or two, let's be honest, you know. But when I look at when I go to Gather and I pull up Eric's name, it's just gas all the way through, and he's just so, you know, diverse in terms of the things he does, and I love everything, and so I'm just a big fan of Eric's. I
mean, Gideon Ally of Zendikar, Fatal Push, you know, Elspeth Sun's Champion, like some of the
standard staples,
Dak Faden, you know, one of the most important vintage cards and quite a while. Like all these important cards, like Gideon in particular, because like he incredible body work, don't get me wrong, but like Gideon was sort of the face. Remember when they first showed Battle for Zendikar, they put Gideon in your face. Like, Gideon's going to be for real, and he's awesome. And this was the artist that they had to sort of present it that way, and that's very important for a set. They can't let that down. Which is
he also did the zombie promotional arts from San Diego Comic-Con in 2016. I'm sure Aaron's a big fan of those. Also is responsible for one of the cringiest pieces of art. Like, I can't really look at Deflecting Palm for too long. Like, it makes me very deeply uncomfortable to look at Deflecting Palm because of the bones poking through.
A lot of people don't even notice the bones.
I can't. You shouldn't. Don't do it. It doesn't feel good.
And one of his funnest pieces is Revel in Riches. That incredible like upshot and the golds, you know, raining down. It's absolutely fantastic. And don't do too long at Deflecting Blow.
I like his skeletal grimace, even though it's a garbage card. I remember whenever I would flip through a pack and I would just see that face.
It kind of reminds me of Mr.
It just made me so happy.
That card reminds me of Mr. Toth from Raiders of the Lost Ark, just like with the hat and eventually when he melts. Yeah.
Oh man.
Love it. Spoiler alert.
I know, right? Well, we had one number 8, which is good. So we'll move on here to number 7. Ruben, do you have a number 7?
I do. I have the rest of the top 10, guys. I only had one higher. Y'all are the folks who are, you know, slightly
bunch of hires.
But my number 7, again, we talk about unique styling. We talk about cards that are when you say a card's name, you should be able to picture it in your head. Mm-hmm. But when you say some of these card names, you see them in your head, but then they're sort of fuzzy because that's sort of his style. It's very ethereal and nightmarish, and so you recall them, but less as memories and more as feelings. That's how I feel when I picture the art for Thragtusk in my head. Is I can picture Thragtusk, but it's like kind of weird in its shape. Same with Baleful Strix. Same with the original Grave Titan, with the zombies pouring out of his chest. Delver of Secrets and Insectile Abomination. That's just the feeling that Nils Hamm gives me when I think of Nils Hamm's artwork. And so I have Nils at number 7. he's just so weird and dark, but not dark in a color sense, but dark. You just feel dread. Like some of these items are just sort of wispy and ethereal in a way that you can't. You see them and then you look away and you forget exactly what they looked like, but you remember the feeling that they elicited.
I mean, Delver of Secrets. I mean,
Delver of Secrets
huge.
Is the main one. He did the whole storyline of Delver through Aberrant Researcher, etc.
Yeah, his cards always seem to have additional layers of detail to them, or dare I say, they're a little extra, which I love. Where it'd be one thing to be like, here's a bird. But like when you really look at that bird, it's like etched. Like there are things on Baleful Strix. Like it's an event. Grave Titan, it'd be very easy to be like, it's a droid, zombie, sword, go. No, there are things coming out of it. Like his art is very much, you really have to look past the surface. And when you do, it's beautiful and disturbing. And I love that, because just when you think you know what's going on, it's like, look closer. And then you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, the dual deck Stinkweed Imp is incredible. And Skullbriar the Walking Grave, for example, like it's almost the idea of horror. It's like what he gets across. It's if you also look at a card that I really like called Skin Invasion from Shadows over Innistrad, which is, it's just sort of terrifying. And this thing, this guy's back and the eyes are red, and you flip it over and it's not fully formed. It's just like, it's just this horrific, like in the shadows. It's got things and spines and fingers and it's gross. And it's going to come and get you.
I also really enjoy how he's able to turn that style and use it in a way that isn't necessarily nightmarish so much as he's got a couple of cute ones. Like he's got Gilderbairn, for example, which might be one of the cutest Magic cards in history. His inclusion in Dominaria is Sanctum Spirit, which elicits an interesting feeling of ennui, I would say, rather than horror or being scared of anything. He's able to bring out feeling that isn't necessarily just frightening, even though he can certainly do that with his many types of zombies and creepy crawlies. But he's able to use that sort of drop shadow. It sort of looks like there might even be like a silk screen behind the front main characters to fade the background away. And he's just a master of using that sort of effect to elicit feeling.
So while we're talking about masters, my number 7 is pretty freaking good. Is an artist who I felt, particularly at the time, could basically sold the whole set on how good the art was for it. Like when you first see about a set, again, we talked about in Gideon Zendikar, you're like, wow, that's a sweet looking Gideon. That's a really powerful piece of artwork. And this artist elicited very much the same thing. And I got to see them at GP Paris many years ago, where I was basically just like, it's the greatest thing ever. I love your art. Because, essentially, when you are the person who brought us a Wormcoil Engine, and you basically said that, like, Scars of Mirrodin is this, and not only did they do the promo version for the pre-release, you remember they used to give you like $30-$40 just for showing up. Also did the regular version, also did the Worm tokens, which were incredible, and has a fantastic body of work. Raymond Swanlin, it just has such energy. Like there is so much energy in his work. Ugin the Spirit Dragon is fantastic. Sweltering Suns, like again, that was one of those where, how did they get that kind of effect? Stagger Shock. These are cards that, again, when you tell me them, I'm like, wow, I can remember exactly what that card looks like and how sort of powerful that card was. Did Planar Bridge for the Masterpiece series recently in Kaladesh, which is great. Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, did both versions of that. Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh. Like, you think they give that to anybody? Think they give, the God Pharaoh to just random artist? No.
Did my Brawl General here, Itali, the Primal Storm.
I mean, Mana Drain from Masters 25 or from Iconic Masters.
Mana Drain is absurd.
I've done a ton of art for Hearthstone as well. Did both of the original Shadow Words, Pain and Death.
Nice.
And a bunch, just a ton of stuff for Hearthstone, like 30-40 cards.
Wow.
Which obviously there's a much smaller card pool in Hearthstone, but did a lot of those ones as well, including some of the most famous cards like Alakir the Windlord, some characters that Erin might recognize from her days. Did the art for Alexstrasza. Vol'jin did the Chill Maw. Definitely did a lot of the, That was a good card for
I mean,
a minute there.
They gave him Angrath, the Flame Chain, and again, Planeswalkers don't just go to anybody.
True.
Bituminous Blast did the most recent version, I believe, of Bloodbraid Elf. This was from Eternal
That Bloodbraid
Masters.
Elf is intense, yeah.
Definitely an iconic style as well. Like, you definitely look at Raymond Swanlund's work and start seeing it. Like, once you understand what Raymond does, you're like, oh, the spikes, the energy, the movements. You can feel the things that are happening. I think he also did Royal Elemental, and does a lot of those like super chaotic, herky jerky. Like, you feel things happening in his art.
Forceful.
It's not, it's definitely stuff is happening during, and a lot of artists do either before or after, or portrait pieces. His stuff is occurring in the art.
Oh man, like Banefire was a favorite of mine, which is incredible. He also did Arid Mesa, with those cut, kind of weird temple mountain things.
And I remember seeing that Arid Mesa and being like, wow, Raymond Swanlund's a weird one to do a land art, because again, that energy, that excitement, you don't particularly think pastoral landscapes, but I mean, that Arid Mesa is just gorgeous.
Absolutely. Aaron, what's your number 7?
I can't with my number 7. My number 7, when I think I've seen it all, when I think that when I look at a piece of art that they've done, I think it can't get any better than this. They're peaking. This is the peak. Everything else is going to pale in comparison. And then a couple months go by and they're like, oh, hey, girl, I heard what you thought about me, and here's something even better. And it's just like, how? How are you like this? How are you consistently just changing the game? I can't with you. My number 7 is Magali Villeneuve. Magali! How are you like this, my dear? She's particularly known for painting female characters. She did Chandra, Torch of Defiance. She did both sides of Search for Escanta, the recent Huntmaster of the Fells. I just can't. Like, every time I look at something Huntmaster, I thought Huntmaster was it. I was like, all right, we're done. Magali can just pack it up. It's not going to get any better.
The new From the Vault Huntmaster,
And then just something else happens, and it's like, oh,
and then
God.
Jaya Ballard, you're just like, oh.
Did the new Jaya?
She was recently not feeling very well. She was sick, and she was still going to GPs. She was still, God bless her husband. Her husband was running Twitter for a while there, but still answering questions, still signing things, still doing interviews. Her work ethic is insane. The way that she works with cosplayers, she has a great love for the women who cosplay her characters. She works with them, she supports them, she plugs them. But just her art, there's just nothing. There's not a piece she's done that I've been disappointed in. There's just a consistent stepping up of the game, and I'm just like, I can't.
She was my number 8.
She was also my number 8.
Haha!
Look at that.
There we go. There's a Twitter poll for you right there.
Nice.
That's
terrific. Her use of her ability to encapsulate what magic looks like in a two-dimensional like in a painting, in not moving, but looking like movement. Her ability to make movement and magic and make it look like it's flowing and active is second to none. There's a reason why Chandra, Torch of Defiance was our pick for Art of the Year in last year's Mikesies. Obviously the similar art on the emblem, much more close up on Chandra's face. But even on cards that are just kind of simple, like Dive Down, you can see how much movement there is. Her addition to Dominaria is Academy Journey Mage, where you can see the swirling of the magic in the air around the wizard that's happening there. And you're right. She's well known for her character studies, essentially, of Chandra and Jaya and Huntmaster and Leovold, Emissary of Trest. She is just at the top of her game, and it's just a treat and a pleasure whenever she has anything in any set. I still have my double-sided Narset playmat. Mm-hmm. She did both arts of as well, and the movement of the drapery of the robes that Narset's wearing in both pieces is also just spectacular. Her new take on Negate in Rivals of Ixalan, again with the whipping around of the magic and the interaction, her ability to make counter spells, I think, should be more used as well. I just like everything that she's able to do.
She also did Rashmi, Lycia. The women that she paints just have this regalness about them, just in the way they carry themselves, and they're just so forceful and so strong. I was particularly blown away by her Shauna from Dominaria, sort of, and how she chose to illustrate that sort of hexproof aspect of like the gold, the dust kind of floating around the character. And there's so many ways that you could have portrayed that. And like I said, just every time she comes out with something, I'm just like, oh, like you're so good.
It is incredibly. It's just vibrant. It's alive. I love the feeling that her art evokes essentially. And it was both our number 8, which is fan freaking tastic. So your number 7, our number 8. We're on that same wavelength, which is cool. So let's move on here to number 6. Ruben, what's your number 6?
So my number 6 is an artist who has a lot of art, has been working on the game for a very long time, but I want to draw particular attention to I believe it's the 10th edition version of Terror.
Ooh.
Which is just, to my mind, one of the most evocative, interesting pieces of Magic art that I've ever seen. It is terrifying and gross, but also interesting and evocative of a feeling of terror that encapsulates both the feeling of the word and what the card does. And Adam Rex is spectacularly good, but really that terror in particular is why I put him on the list, because I just love that card in particular. His other stuff is he has a control of bodies and muscle and these bulbous misshapes that no one else really has. You can see it on cards like Stone Kavu, for example, or Symbol of Unsummoning. He is responsible for Una, Queen of the Fae.
Wow.
He also did Mind Stone. He did Woodfall Primus, and does a lot of body shapes. He did a lot of the Nim in the original Mirrodin block as well. And yeah, he's been around forever. Did stuff in Mercadian Masks block, and is still going strong, I think.
I mean, he did stuff in Stronghold, I believe was maybe some of his first stuff.
Yeah, he did Breezekeeper in Visions, actually, as one of his early ones as well. Another well-known piece he did is Char. So, but yeah, he's able to. He has this command of, specifically, I really like his command of muscle and body movement to convey feeling.
Right, but there's some other pieces that he does that are sort of a little bit less body focused. Like Woodfall Primus is weird, but you get it as a huge tree spirit thing that's super awesome. And there's a bunch of pieces like there's Seedborn Muse, for example, that again very iconic. The original Reflecting Pool, incredibly iconic. The original, I believe this is the original Remove Soul. Which is another one. So, so many awesome, cool pieces. Like I like the Peak and the Prohibit.
The Peak is another great one that has some interesting feeling to it. Aaron, Leyline of the Void, original.
Huh?
Big fan? Big fan of that one?
I don't know her. I don't.
Okay, well.
Orzhov Pontiff, though.
Nice.
Mwah.
Yes.
Pontiff is great. Yes. I love Pontiff. All right, that said, Aaron, what's your number 6?
My number 6. Now we're starting to get into my old school portion. We're starting to go a little deeper into the vault here. The artists that I remember from my childhood that we don't really see anymore, but left an impact on me through the years. And my number 6's style is fun. Dare I say even campy. And it's a style that we don't really see anymore. All of her artwork is fun. It's colorful. She's painted a lot of women. She can do serious, like on cards like Kismet. But she can also have fun with cards like Eureka, Coffin Queen, Scheherazade. My number 6 is Kaja Foglio. Kaja is known for doing a lot of things with her husband, Phil. I think I might have even pronounced her name wrong. If so, I'm sorry. But when I think of like my first couple of packs that I ever opened as a teenager, Bird Maiden, that beautiful, just like the wings. And a lot of her art tends to have big smiles on them, big cheesin' smiles, and just not taking themselves too seriously. Still being beautiful, still being scary, but just having this element of like fun and whimsy that, almost an animated quality about them. Like you could see these characters in a card cartoon. And, she does women very well. I think of Kumbaj Witches, the very busty midriff, but still in a very empowering, again, fun kind of way where, it's not taken too seriously. It's very tongue in cheek. And, I just love those cards. Daring Apprentice is another one. You have sort of the busty demoness with the horns holding on to like the priestess or the apprentice. And the use of colors that she uses are just so alive and so, again, just fun, animated. It's just a style we don't see anymore. And I have a great appreciation for Kaja's art. And it's just what I think of just all these years ago. It's like the art really drew me in.
I miss the Foglios. I really do. I mean, you have Mishra's freaking factory. I mean, all 4 seasons, the winter one. But even when it's just by herself, for example, Millstone, again, one of those classic, iconic pieces of artwork. Pyroblast, Hydroblast, this is some of the stuff from the very beginning. Spirit Link from Legends. I mean, all that stuff. The Swords of Plowshares.
Winter Blast, where it's like the ice princess in the sky, where she's like translucent, and it's like, oh my god, but still fun. It's not serious, where it's like, I am an ice queen. No, she's like smiling, and it's fun, and fun. I just love that.
I mean, Teferi's puzzle box alone from Visions is just such a cool. I mean, again, it's the way it's difficult to sort of nail down exactly what the style is, but I also like the fact that you mentioned that, a lot of it's like they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of fantasy artwork, everyone's just like tortured and pissed
Super
off.
dour. Yeah.
Everything's wrong, and they have a charge.
Eureka! The guy's just like,
he's just super happy, man.
I also really like Kaja's style in that it doesn't. It's not necessarily hyper realistic. It feels more like this is a artist's interpretation of these characters, which I really greatly appreciate, much more in the style of the sagas, for example. You look at Coffin Queen. Erin obviously had her token modeled after Coffin Queen, and you see the sort of saint-like Catholic aura around the Coffin Queen. That's not hyper realistic, but it evokes a feeling that I really appreciate. My favorite art of hers ever has to be the original Bottle Gnomes. From Tempest, just because that card is perfect in every way, shape, or form. They're adorable. The flavor text is so funny. It's just like, and it's a great card too. I used to play a ton of Bottle Gnomes. But yeah, I love the Foglios, and Kaja's a great one.
So my number 6, we're back into the sort of the newer realm of Magic, but I would note that this is also, I would consider this artist probably the best person to market themselves from any other. And I can imagine that as soon as I said that, you know who I'm talking about, but I'll go on a little bit. Someone who has certainly sort of grown into being a top tier Magic artist very, very quickly. To see the career and the way that this guy's career has taken off just these past few years through Magic. He's done 91 pieces in Magic. Which is a lot, but some of them have become some of the most iconic and powerful images that we've ever seen. And there's no artist that is better than at marketing themselves than Noah Bradley. Noah Bradley is super good at knowing that he's super good. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And he's fine.
And he's also taking incredible images of his body. He's like, "Yo, got this bod, y'all." And if I had it, I'd be there too. But, when you look at like all of his work, that even just most recently, of course, the Urza's Ruinous Blast, the legendary sorceries that he just destroyed, absolutely amazing. But you also have like Temple of Mystery, Temple of Epiphany. A lot of the temples that he did was awesome. The most recent Doomsday was absolutely incredible.
That's the one. I mean, we have that listed right now in our nominees for Art of the Year for later for the Magic Mics. That one in particular stuck out to me as just something ultra spectacular and interesting and totally unique in Magic. He also did the History of Benalia from the most recent set, that beautiful stained glass window piece. This year. He did Karn's Temporal Sundering as well. And I think my favorite that he's done recently is The Approach of the Second Sun. Which just is so it just feels legendary. It feels epic.
Yeah, there's the Endless Sands also has that kind of Commander's Authority where you're just like, I'm squinting, but I shouldn't, but it's weird because I feel like I should be,
He's definitely stepped his cookie up, and it's not that he really needed to, but, you mentioned earlier, Evan, that certain cards aren't given to just anybody, and, it would be one thing if they were given to him and he didn't necessarily deliver, where it's like, well, you got a Planeswalker and That's what you did with it. Like,
Right.
But every card he's been given, he's knocked it out of the park. And that's something I like to see with an artist. I like to see growth. I like to see them just sort of, taking a bite out of the opportunities they're given. And he's certainly done that. And he's also done a lot to shape the conversation regarding compensation and what artists are worth. He's one of the few artists that is just very unapologetic and rightfully so. Get them coins. No, I'm not mad. But, he's very open about this is what I'm worth. And I'm not coming to your event until I get this, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he's certainly inspired other artists to speak up and talk about, the conditions and what they're worth as well. And I love seeing that. I think he deserves every dollar, and I'm happy to see people getting paid what they're worth.
Yeah, and he's very much like, I will burn this rather than give it to you at a fire sale discount. I will do my own fire sale and burn it because I know that this is what the stuff is worth, and if you don't want it, that's okay.
But to be fair, he's also fun too. We've talked about some of the more serious aspects with but he doesn't take himself too seriously. Obviously, there's a playmat of him on a beach having a beer. His bromance with Victor, I love watching them interact together at GPs and on social media. So I think he does a really good job of balancing the serious and the fun. Like you said, Evan, he markets himself very well, and just a treasure all around.
I really like his command of light source. A lot of it's difficult to use light source when it's in the foreground, when it's something being held, or it's when the light isn't the sun or the moon, or if it's still a focused point, something like on his prophetic prism, for example, where it seems like there's light emanating from the center of something. Also on Yawgmoth's Vile Offering, for example, which, by the way, he did all of the legendary sorceries in Dominaria, and he just has a really interesting command of light and shadow in that specific case, which I really appreciate.
All right, so moving on here to number 5. I'm gonna. So we went to new school. It's time to go back to old school, and particularly one of my favorite piece of art in Magic, like my favorite artwork that I got as a playmat, sitting on a playmat on my desk right now. It's signed. I met this artist when I first came back to Magic. When I went back to Magic in 2004 and I went to Origins, and I didn't know what was going on, but all I knew was I love this piece of art, and you made it in Arabian Nights, and it's called Library of Alexandria, and Mark Poole is awesome. Dream of Life, Birds of Paradise, I mean, my gosh, it's ridiculous. Urza's Tower did a set of those just like Tadine did. To have Mark Poole, even to this day, in Amonkhet, to have a piece that he did in that one, which was Painted Bluffs, which was very cool. So to have someone who started in Magic back then, still making artwork for the game, an incredible artist, and Library of Alexandria just, to me, is such an incredible piece of artwork. And again, Wizards knew it, and they utilized it the best they could. But for me, as a Magic player, his artwork really stood out. I got to meet him and talk to him back in 2004. Super awesome guy. And yeah, I just love his stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, I think I've told this story a couple times, that Birds of Paradise was the first card that I ever got signed by a Magic artist. I must have been 13 years old and got my playset of 4th edition Birds of Paradise signed. And yeah, they're somewhere in my stuff, but I'm a mess, so they're around.
Well, I mean, to have the counterspell, the crusade, the balance, for God's sake, like
he's done so many iconic pieces over the years.
Ancestral Recall,
just one.
For God's sake.
I mean, he is a necessary, vital part of the history of Magic art. That Library of Alexandria, in particular, I agree, is just a piece de resistance. And he's still working to this day. He did the Painted Bluffs from Amonkhet. Right. He's still got lots of recent stuff. So he's been working on Magic for decades at this point, and it's nice to see.
It was really cool. I mean, they and particularly for stuff like Time Spiral, when they brought him back to do Ancestral Vision, they brought him back to do Cancel,
Restore Balance.
Right, Restore Balance. A lot of these sort of callbacks to his older work were in that, and that's really awesome. So, Ruben, what's your number 5?
My number 5, you mentioned earlier that it's, not just anybody gets to do a Planeswalker. This guy is the Planeswalker guy. He did the Lorwyn 5. He did Nahiri. He essentially did a self-portrait for Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. I assume he's done more Planeswalkers than any other human. That would be my guess. Also did Vraska the Unseen, among others. But perhaps is best known for his original Thoughtseize that came out in Lorwyn as well, alongside the Lorwyn 5, and that would be Alexi Bricklow. I believe is how that name is pronounced. So Alexi, I believe we met. I mean, I certainly met him. We met at Worlds in 2007. What was that?
It was.
Yeah.
God,
And that was one of his first American public appearances. That was one of his first times. He sort of, that's right around when he started doing magic art, and he has just been, gangbusters ever since, doing stuff like, actually he did Flames of the Blood Hand before that. So he was a little bit under the radar, but, since then he's been, especially starting with Lorwyn, with the original Planeswalkers and cards like Eyes of the Wisent and Thoughtseize. When you picture the card Demonic Pact in your head from Origins, that's a super evocative image. His command of flames is particularly fascinating to me because they have shadow. And so he gets a lot of action out of the use of these darker fire imagery. In addition to his portraits and his command of shadow and action, he has a lot of detail in his art as well. You can dig deep into stuff like Commune with the Gods and really look at all of the detail and the high-res images of all of his work. And so I really like Alexi Bricklow.
He also has a way of painting things with what appears to be a great distance between the background and the foreground. So I'm looking at Angel of Serenity, I'm looking at Carnifex Demon, I'm looking at Bobo, Borborygmos Enraged, and you see these very in-your-face, larger-than-life characters, and then like great backgrounds. Like you see the Carnifex and like the sun rising or the sun setting. You see Bobo and like just this bright light behind him, and you see that with a lot of his cards. There's like a big, larger-than-life figure, and it'd be one thing to have it just eclipse the frame. Oh no, he wants you to see how that works, the depth of it, and that's something that I think of when I think of him.
Oh man, like back in the day when Dissension showed up, I mean, one of the reasons I was super pumped about Wind Reaver was because it looks freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It just looks amazing.
Absolutely.
So to have Venser, which is one of the best cards out of Time Spiral period, best card in the Future Sight, Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, of course, was amazing. Tombstalker was like the de facto until later, other cards showed up, which is fine too. But, that Thoughtseize alone, Tezzeret Agent of Bolas, like when I went to Worlds in Chiba, Japan, Tezzeret Agent of Bolas was just like, pow. It was everywhere, blew up to billboard size. They were able to use that artwork terrifically. Stigma Lasher just has such incredible menace to it.
His art has been like the focus first presented art for a couple of sets, not just the Lorwyn 5, but also Gideon Jura, Kozilek the Great Distortion, Nahiri the Harbinger. These main characters, they are not afraid to give to Alexi.
Yeah.
No, and his cards seem like sometimes you see 3D altars where people will carve out backgrounds. I feel like his cards are really ripe for that, where it seems like Nahiri especially, you carve out that and then you make her push her to the forefront. Like his pieces in particular seem like they're really good candidates for that.
Oh man, it's someone just like Light from Within. It's so cool. It's a cool, I feel a little bad that this one isn't on my list. That's and that's a good thing. Yeah. I'm like, man, Alexi totally deserves to be here.
In case you're interested in more non-Magic Alexi stuff, he's currently a video game art director, but he also does a lot of comic book covers, including the New Avengers and the Thanos Imperative, which are both relevant right now. So
nice. Well, that's awesome. I knew about his video game work. I didn't know about his comic work. Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is another old school artist. I feel like he does Grizzly very well, but he doesn't do it in such a way where it's done with like muted colors and faded palettes. When he does Grizzly, he uses beautiful colors, and his Grizzly almost has a sheen to it, or a shine to it, which seems very, I think of him when I see that. And even when he's drawing like non-Grizzly things, like even when he's doing Angels and Humans, there's still something off about them. Like they still don't look quite right, and they're very unnerving and very unsettling. He's known for such noteworthy cards as Cabal Therapy, Crucible of Worlds, and Plague Bearer, that big bloated jaw just like unhinging and then spewing plague at somebody and then having them just like dissolve. My number 5 is Ron Spencer. Nice. It's just when I think of like black mages, I just think of Ron Spencer, and even just the way that he does other things. For example, you have, I think it's Anthroplasm, where it's just a thing like being dissected. Like it's this weird like a torso torso, and then there's like stuff, and then the other half is like a half a minotaur, and it's like, it should be really gross. And it'd be one thing to like have, you know, he could very easily like have blood dripping and have it like in a sanctum, but it's light, like there's colors, and it appears to be like in a well-lit area. It's a blue card. You know, you look at either flash and you look at like the skeleton seeping through after something's being shocked, and even just the angels. You know, there's a card where he did an angel. That angel don't look right, honey. Like, I don't know what's wrong with her, but she don't even look right. And so, you know, even when he does grisly and he does horror in a way that's very subtle, and even when he's drawing things that aren't meant to be scary, he still makes them very unnerving. And I just have such a great appreciation for his catalog. You look at things like Bone Shredder, Carrion Beetle. It's a bug literally poking an eyeball out of a head. You see the head, and it's just, what? And I love how grisly this is, but still like, pretty at the same time.
Right. I mean, look at the gorgeousness of Quicksilver Dragon. Like, it's weird because you don't really, Ron Spencer hasn't done anything in Magic in quite a while.
No.
Ron Spencer hasn't worked for over 5 years.
Diabolic Edict of Vati being thrown.
Oh yeah,
for Magic in over 5 years.
Sure, for Magic.
He's top 5 all time most Magic art ever produced. He's got over 200 pieces of art, which is a rarefied air. But you can definitely, when you see a Ron Spencer piece of art, you know that you know what's happening. He's got the viscera, the sharp edges. The darkness, the dread, the sort of empty-eyed, thousand-yard stares of these monsters that he creates.
Even the humans look that way.
Yeah, super iconic.
I mean, you know, you have cards like Sliver Queen, which I think will just live forever. This is one of those classic sort of fantasy artists. I mean, he did the original Terror, so he's been there since the beginning. 245 cards, at least according to Scryfall. You have just an incredible body of work that is, for me, very evocative of that time period of the beginning of Magic, is through essentially probably Tempest or Urza Block, you know, because it really helped define what those cards look like and felt. That said, move on here to number 4. Now we're getting super old school because I feel like we're getting to the big bigs up here.
Oh yeah.
And and I've got hires for my next 2, so I got to make this one count. So this one is an artist that has over 200 cards to their library, their catalog. Has been there since the very beginning, which is another big push. Has continued to do work throughout the years. Is an incredibly nice guy. Met him a couple times. Got to interview him, even if you actually go on my channel and search for him, you can see an interview that I did with Rob Alexander, because he illustrated the dual lands. I mean, he illustrated the shock lands. Like, you know, again, these are not things that they give lightly to anyone. But to have done so many incredible art pieces just for basic lands, so many incredible pieces for, again, Ravnica, and be able to help what define Ravnica is. Mirrodin did an incredible job. You know, there's like Heartbeat of Spring was fantastic. It's great. So you can just kind of go through and just be like, oh, Llanowar Wastes, you know what that looks like. Oh, he did like Lance from Alpha, you know, which is cool. But also got to come back from Magus of the Bazaar, which was neat. So, and has some of my favorite cards. Oboro Palace in the Clouds is absolutely gorgeous. You know, Rob just has this way of, it's classic fantasy. It's not necessarily the shiniest or the most sort of spotlight oriented, but he does a great job at what he's given. And, and to be able to do all these cool lands, the snow-covered swamps, you know, all the way back to like Shivan Reef, even from Sheltered Valley. I mean, he did the original Steam Vents, you know, for that red-blue kind of mixture. He was there first. Did Squadron Hawk, which was absolutely fantastic, basically ran the format. So not only basic lands they did great, but the dual lands he did great, and all the rest of his stuff is terrific.
He also does lands well even when he's not doing lands. Like if you look at cards like Gravity Well, you know, Gravity Well is an enchantment, but when you think of that, you think of the land aspect, Harrow or Harrow. Again, that's sort of the, you know, the cliff, the sort of the dying land, and then sort of the vines coming in. You know, that just seems to be something he does well. Exile, you know, Exile is this beautiful sort of castle, you know, on a hill or a mountain. You know, he just does land well even when he's not. Elvish Bard. I mean, there's an elf on the card, but the elf is small compared to the land, the things happening in the background. He just does land well.
Yeah, the thrumming stone with the rocky outcrops in the background are another good example of that. Yeah, he's got his wheelhouse. Boy, howdy, let me tell you. He is the lands guy, not just in Magic, but he's done tons of other stuff. I'm sure you've seen his work in Vampire, Aaron, as well as Legend of the Five Rings. He's done Middle Earth. He does book covers, and a lot of them are landscapes. He, in particular, does a lot of the stuff for Plane Chase and does a lot of the planes. He did the Sanctum of Sarah, for example, which obviously makes sense. He brings life to these worlds in a way that is unique among Magic artists.
I mean, when they debuted Ravnica City of Guilds, they showed you Temple Garden. That was the first thing you ever saw from Ravnica, was what Rob Alexander gave us. Like that, that's incredible.
Yeah, nice guy. I met him at GP Louisville about a year or two ago. He signed my Bayou and my Badlands. I was playing Reanimator at the time, and just that light bulb went off of, oh hey, he did those cards I'm using. Sweet, and just very lovely guy.
You got to respect the originals. Of the original 25 artists for Magic the Gathering, only the three longest working ones of them are Rob Alexander, Ron Spencer, and Mark Tadine.
Wow, all on our lists. So, Ruben, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is not an old school artist. He does not have over 100 pieces of art, but what he does have is a lot of the most powerful and iconic imagery of Magic of the last 10 years. He illustrated Karn Liberated. He illustrated Maya El of the Anima, Pact of Negation, Phyrexian Unlife, Vampire Nighthawk, Iona, Thassa, and of course, Jace the Mind Sculptor. My number 4 is Jason Chan.
Yeah.
He is able to evoke importance, and that's why he's given all these main characters. He has command of both super hyper close up, mid level, and long shot. More than any other artist, I think, working in Magic today. He takes advantage of angle, strange, weird angles. You take a look at a card like Apocalypse Hydra that's sort of at an askewed camera angle where the camera's kind of on a tilt as a result of this giant beast coming in from the side. You look at a card like Kargon Dragonlord, that sort of skewed under angle at a side as well, evoking the action and the excitement of what's going on there as well. He's just so good at evoking feeling with his control of lighting as well. You look at a card like Omniscience, and it sort of just evokes this ethereal nature of power and gravitas. I just love everything that he produces.
I mean, the Jace versus Chandra counterspell. I mean, with that sick red on blue. I have begged this man. I begged this man to come to Grand Prix. And
God help him if he does, because he's going to be signing all my stuff. I play Unlifes. I play packs. I just sign all the things.
I think he's been like maybe 1, maybe 2 events or something, but like ever, I'm just like, please, Jason, please. Yeah. People want you to sign their stuff. Yeah. Because it's awesome, and it also kind of makes me sad because it appears that he hasn't made anything in years for Magic.
Run the Last Troll, Strangleroot Geist. I mean, just my God.
The Johnny Vengeance promo. Yeah. I mean, it was nuts.
He hasn't worked since for Magic since 2015. So he's got a relatively short amount of time in Magic, but in that time, he definitely made some of the most evocative images.
I mean, Abyss and Angel of Hope. I mean, these are things that sold sets. These are key artwork pieces that were important for those things to work. And man, he did an amazing job. Even if you just go like to Nimbus Maze. Nimbus Maze is just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous.
These days, he's a senior concept artist with Riot, which makes League of Legends, obviously. So quite busy making the world's most popular esports game, making art and marketing and stuff like that. So he's a little busy with that.
Sure. Aaron, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is higher on somebody else's list. It is my second higher of the night.
Fair enough. Well, like I said, ain't got no number 3, ain't got no number 2. I don't know what one of y'all's number 1 is, which is fine. Aaron, do you have a number 3?
I do. My number 3 is not only one of the most pleasant artists I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know, he's also one of the hardest working. I cannot think of a GP I've been to that he wasn't at. He's there when it opens. He's there when it closes. He is just on the grind. He does these exclusive playmats for whatever event he's at that you can typically only get at the event. There's never not a line for his services. He's never not doing something. He's always doing alters, commissions, what have you, and just has this very quirky sense of humor. I had the pleasure of having him on the deck tees back in the day, and he wouldn't tell me what his name stood for. And to this day, I'm still not really sure, but I have a hint. And every time I see him, I throw a new suggestion, and he's like, no. I will get it right one of these days. My number 3 is RK Post. Mm-hmm. So RK Post is known for such iconic pieces as Icarid, Fairy Macabre, Avatar of Woe, and just one of the hardest working guys. Even after just having a baby, his wife just had a baby, and he's like, well, I'm going to go to the Philippines. And it's just like, what? But you just, you really have to struggle. You really struggle to think of an event that he hasn't been at. He's at the mall. He's just one of the hardest working people, just one of the greatest people, very nice guy, despite being as busy as he gets. Some people might let it fray with them a little bit. It doesn't really get to him. And I don't think he's done too much recently. I think Burning Earth was the most recent card. But again, just as one of those very unique styles that when you see a card, you're like, that's some RK Post stuff right there. And just the total package when it comes to work ethic and talent and everything else.
He seems to have very similar characters in that they're all very sort of bony and they're kind of spindly. His for what it's worth, the R is Randy. So it's Randy Post. I have no idea what the K is for. I'm sure it's really cool.
He told me it rhymed with an organ or a body part. I know, right?
Randy Kiver, Randy Cart.
Kiver is a good one.
Femur.
Right, but when I look through it and I see sort of Fairy Macabre and Emissary of Despair and whatnot, they look very similar to me in terms of very sort of like a Fulminator mage, very spindly, very things are kind of drawn out and there's lots of elbows and spiky things, and I think he, if anyone else, has gotten the most mileage out of his work. Like he's really embraced the idea of, I am the traveling artist. I made these cards. I don't make as much anymore. However, I do make this really sweet stuff. Every single tournament shows up with unique stuff you can only get there.
Dice
Absolutely.
Picks. Yeah.
Right, and so it's really diversified his opportunities for you to sort of let him make a living, and I think that's really incredible.
Absolutely.
So move on here to your number 3, Ruben. What is it?
So my number 3 is maybe the hottest property in Magic right now in terms of an artist. We've had a lot of the folks in the Magic the Gathering community who are focused on art and the creation of it, including Vorthos Mike, who did the art show last summer, and Magic Man Sam recently did a focus video on Seb McKinnon, who only has about 50 pieces and has only been working since Magic 2013. But boy, has he had an impact thus far already. Yeah. For me, that new Rite of Bells and Lock piece, as the saga in Dominaria, is special, and the fact that he sort of built this whole scene around it with Dirge of Dread and several other cards of this style of how the Rite of Bells and Lock came about. Obviously there's the Eternal Masters in Tomb, which is also super iconic. I have a playmat for the Twilight Prophet that came out in Ixalan block. Debt to the Deathless from Rivals.
Oh my God! Yeah.
He's also a video and film creator, director, producer, in addition to being an illustrator, in addition to being a musical talent as well. His work artistically is not limited only to the Magic the Gathering realm. His sense of stylization and creating these sort of dioramas or murals in much the same way that we were talking about the Foglios, but in a much different vein, in a much different, much more foreboding. He has a haunting feeling to these stylized, somewhat ritualistic feeling pieces that he does. He is one of, if not the most iconic artists working today in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, he does creepy very well. You know, I said that Ron Spencer does grizzly very well, and Seb does creepy very well. You know, you look at Dirge of Dread, and you also see things like Grim Haruspects. You know, I think of Grim Return, where you literally see a step-by-step process of somebody being sort of resurrected. Of, you know, you see them being dead, you see like a sword through them kind of like futzing with the sword a little bit, and then taking it out and be like, I'm cool. Like, what? You know, you see things like Immortal Servitude, you know, and just sort of the, you know, if Ron Spencer's is more overt, you know, Seb's is more subtle, where he's not really beating you over the head with like gore or anything, but it's just sort of these illusions of creepy things, you know, things that are not right happening. And, you know, he does that very, very well. And, and that's something, even the stasis, you know, while it's a blue card and while there's flowers and a child, that child is hella creepy, you know, and you look at just the statues around them and just like, he just delivers every time. And, you know, there are some artists who I wish I saw growth from, but in Seb's case, I kind of like that he kind of stays in his lane, where he's like, this is what I'm good at, and this is who I am, and I'm gonna deliver it all times. You know, he did Springleaf Drum, you know, he did Topplegeist. You know, the Topplegeist, this ghost that's just putting out candles, like,
it's so creepy though.
Unreal. Yeah, very unreal talent. This was my number 9.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Well, I mean, the demon token from Dominaria, I mean, that side profile, the red coming out with the wings is incredible. I mean, what other artist do you really want to do the conspiracy of assemble the rank and vial, right? Like, this is your guy to go get the rank and the stank, and the debt to the Deathless is fan-freaking-tastic.
The death of the Deathless is just so, I mean, just, you look at that, and that's one of those cards where you're like, they allowed this? Like...
It's just incredibly creepy.
He also he won the Spectrum Award this year for best artist for an industry for that stasis that you were talking about earlier. I mean, so it's tough to beat that when you get the gold.
Fair enough. So let's move on here to number 2 again. I don't have one. Why would I? Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is I think the single most prolific Magic artist. He's done, I think, over 400 pieces.
Wow.
Maybe about 400, which is vastly more than everybody else. He is just incredibly prolific. Another of the working on Magic for decades kind of person. You know, when I think of this artist, I personally think a lot of Urza's Legacy, which is my favorite set of all time, and I think of Deranged Hermit. That's just where I'm at. That's why I got squirrels on my token, ladies and gentlemen. That's why, like, Deranged Hermit is why I'm a wizard making squirrels. He also did Rancor from that set. Some of his other iconic pieces include Damnation from Planar Chaos. He did the New Balance from Eternal Masters. Infernal Tutor, the Sheep Token from Onslaught Block or Unglued or whatever is one of my favorites as well. And he's working today. He did Joyra's Familiar for Dominaria. So my number 2 is Kev Walker.
Man.
He's just done so much, and it's all over the place, and it's so many different styles and depths and types of art and different types of backgrounds, but you look at it and you go, I recognize those spikes, right? Like, I recognize that detail, that dimensionality, that sort of fog of war surrounding some of the background characters. I recognize that is Kev Walker.
I mean, City of Traitors, Volrath's Stronghold, Modern Masters Arcbound Ravager. Like
that Modern Masters Arcbound Ravager is something special.
It's absolutely amazing. The Bounds
Doomwake
promo.
Giant, Aaron. That's one that you appreciate. Dread Return as well. I'm sure you can get behind some Kev Walker.
Look, the instant you see Kitchen Finks, you don't forget what Kitchen Finks looks like. That's just a crazy, awesome picture of some creatures going nuts. He got to do a Wrath of God. I mean, like, it's unbelievable. He got to do a Day of Judgment. I mean, all this awesome artwork from him. He has really defined. This is another one where I'm just like, man, I probably should have Kev Walker on my list. I kind of feel bad because I mean, 425 cards according to Scryfall. That's
he's done.
Huge.
I think he's done like significantly more artworks than any other artist, except for maybe John Avon. But he's done so many pieces. It's got to be more than everybody.
It's more than Avon by
Okay.
almost 100 pieces, or actually.
Well,
over
there
100
you go.
pieces. So
he also for your Kamigawa fix, he did the Myojin cycle, which are all super evocative, all super fascinating. But to be able to have that many pieces, but still be identifiable and be like, that is a Kev Walker piece, is something else.
His work seems to have and I don't mean this as a negative, but, you know, we've talked about colors being kind of vibrant, but his appear always kind of a little bit faded, dare I say. A little muted. I love him particularly for his Volrath. Volrath's one of my favorite cards of all time. Sure. He also did Volrath Stronghold. He did Visara the Dreadful. Upheaval's another one. Just so many good cards.
I mean, he did Dragonstorm, you know? He did Sphinx of the Steel Wind. I mean, it's incredible from start to finish how many awesome pieces. And I mean, Loxodon Hierarch, like that was another one that just defined Ravnica.
Its End. What is that?
So good.
This close up of this very fleshy face and something going on in the eyes, and it's just incredible.
Aaron, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is my last hire on my list.
Wow. Well, I know both of y'all's number 1 because they're clearly must be my number 2 and 3 somewhere. So we'll move on here to number 1. Ruben, what's your number 1?
It's I couldn't. It was so hard. It was so difficult for me to be like, who's the number 1 Magic artist? And for me, it came down to who's been the most consistent, who's been around forever. Someone like Kev Walker, who's made a ton of pieces of art, but is also just has a style that is so unique, so identifiable, so as to be impossible to be confused with anyone else. You cannot confuse the work that Therese Nielsen does with any other artist.
Queen.
You look at Descendants Path. That's the one to me that's just like, what in the world happened in your brain where this came, like, there's levels of genius where I'm like, you know, if I worked hard for 20 years, if I put in the 10,000 hours like that book says, I could probably reach something like that. And then there's levels of genius where I'm just like, nope, there is no way I would ever get. I mean, obviously she has worked incredibly hard to get to where she is, but there's something special that happens in her brain to bring you something like Descendants Path, or to bring you something like Enter the Infinite. And it's just spectacular work. And it's, you look at the movement and the dread that's in a card like Dismember, which is way outside of her wheelhouse. It still feels super professional and is iconic. I mean, and speaking of iconic, you look at Factor Fiction now, and it's like that the art to Factor Fiction just could never be anything else. Why would you even try? And even though it's telling the story of these characters from so long ago, you look at it and you're like, that is something special that can never be changed. Obviously her Hannah Ship's Navigator is the picture of Hannah that we imagine now. Her portraits of the original Weatherlight crew are what we imagine in our heads when we see those characters. From the legacy weapon to Jilt, which shows the Vile Offering storyline point, telling those kinds of stories. But then you come to her more recent work and her more stylized stuff, like the promotional Lotus Cobra and the card Lifelink from M12. And her design and weirdness in those. And there are just so many things that she can do, that she is capable of, that are unique among Magic artists, that she had to be my number 1.
Yeah, she's a very distinct style. Again, another one of those where you look at it and you think, that's a Therese Nielsen piece. For Swords to Plowshares, her Rest in Peace, her Eternal Witness, her Ixodron, it's just the way that she paints and the colors that she uses and the warmth that exudes from her work is very unmistakably her. And again, another artist with a terrific work ethic. The first time I met her was at Gen Con. She was there and she had lines that rivaled Steve Argyle's, and I remember looking at it and going, who are all these people for? I'm thinking it's going to be you know, and they're like, oh, they're here for Therese. And it's like, oh, like she can command an audience. And, you know, I love that her wife has been inspiration for some of her pieces. You know, she's just very driven. They're just fun too. I remember her wife sometimes has like a bacon slingshot and will just sling bacon at people while she's signing autographs. And so I of course know Therese for Life from the Loam. You know, I worked very hard to get the Life from the Loam playmat. I have a Life from the Loam print. You know, I have a great appreciation for that card. But yeah, just another one of those artists that has been consistently working and just, you know, always finds new ways to do what she does and still doing it in a way that just nobody else can touch her. And can I just say, I love watching her and Magali fangirl over each other on Twitter, because Magali will be like, I love you, and Teresa's like, I love you. And just to have somebody, you know, at Teresa's level see somebody kind of up and coming and being like, I see you, and they get along. It's like,
it's so good. I mean, well, Therese was my number 3.
She was my number 4.
Nice. Well, there you go. So, you know, great minds think alike, because Therese, I agree. It's just, when you look at her unholy strength, you know what I mean? Like, you could just be like, whose is this? And you're like, that's clearly has to be Therese Nielsen. I mean, and there's so many times the Swords to Plowshares that the fact that she's really embraced sort of the geometry of her artwork, which has been great, has really sort of shown through. And the more they give her the leeway to do that stuff, like, yeah, they can keep her sort of very tight with the art description or whatever. You know, when you have something like Natural Order, which is one of the most classic pieces ever, but when you say like, you know, Therese, just go nuts, and then I think you get a Descendants Path. I think that's how you get those Descendants Path type cards. Is you're just like, Therese, you know what you're doing, just go make it awesome, and she makes it awesome. And to boot, she's a fantastic person. We got to hang out with her, have dinner with her. Her and her wife, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, that's awesome. Number 1.
Oh, by the way, Force of Will, the original and the most recent,
and the new one.
In case y'all forgot.
That's right. Aaron, what's your number 1?
Oh man, my number 1 is one of the original 25 Magic Gathering artists. They have the distinction of having their work on 3 of the most expensive cards in the game right now. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that without him, there is a hole in the Magic community that cannot be filled. My number 1 is Christopher Rush. So Christopher Rush, you know, famous for having his art on cards like Black Lotus, Lightning Bolt, Shichu Fukusian Dragon.
Yeah.
The 1996 world champion. You know, I have my Black Lotus mouse pad when we first started doing the show. Ruben got us all a mouse pad, which I still lovingly have. You know, Chris was just such a fixture of GPs. You know, he traveled often, and he just had this warmth about him where when you visited his table, you felt welcome when you were there. His original Isan Shade, just this very iconic style. And I remember, you know, he passed in 2016, I believe. And I remember the first GP that he wasn't there, and I think his agent was like still running the table, and just seeing like that empty, and it was just like, and there will never be another Christopher Rush, and just sort of the impact that he had on this game. You know, the Brass Man, you know, the artwork like that, you know, there's just no one else, no one can do it the way that he did, and just he's just missed terribly. And when I thought of, you know, number 1 artists, you know, there was a lot of competition, but it was like it's got to be Chris Rush, and he's very missed, very missed.
That was Chris was my number 2.
Yep.
Because, you know, when I first got in the game, obviously Black Lotus is Black Lotus, Lightning Bolt is Lightning Bolt. Like you just can't get away from that stuff. But when I was, you know, when I was 15, and I was just like, man, it's the greatest thing ever, because I saw characters like Aaron the Relentless. Because I saw characters like Isan Shade. Like, I saw that, and those things were just so cool and unique and dynamic. And, like, I'd never seen anything like it. And that was part of what made me love Magic, was you were just like, man, these characters are so much cooler than anything I can find anywhere else. And just absolutely, just from the very beginning. I mean, from all the sets back in the day, all the way to Archangel. He did Archangel for Visions, and that was one of the most awesome, like, awe-inspiring artworks I'd ever seen at the time. I was like, the red on the white and the thing, it's angelic and great. The card wasn't that good, unfortunately, but I thought it was because it looked awesome. And
I remember you had Yotane Soldier in your signature spellbook as well, which is another Chris Rush classic from way back in Antiquities as well. So I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah, the weird, like, it kind of reminds me of like a ninja
soldier.
Yeah, it's like an ant ninja soldier guy with a ponytail. I don't know what. It doesn't matter because the card was so cool, and I was like, I'll pay 3 mana for a 1/4 vigilance. Let's do this.
Sure.
And I liked it,
Yeah.
and it was powerful at the time, sort of, kind of, maybe. Not really.
Yeah, some of my early memories were of Metamorphosis. I'd never seen that before. That was just so grotesque and so in your face. Nether Shadow, obviously, for the Mannerless Dredge kids out there. Neil Solvane was another one where I remember being, with my friend in 7th grade science class and just trying to figure out what was it. And just going, what's a Neil Solvane? And just my earliest memories are just of this absurd art that he did in the best way. Imaginary Friend, when you think of Imaginary Friend, you're just like, that's what you thought of? Like, okay. Imaginary Pet, sorry.
That sweet Manalik from Stronghold was just...
Yes. Just, even when you're not really sure what you're looking at, you can at least agree that it's beautiful. And that we are worse off as a community without that beauty in our lives.
Yeah. I got to meet him and hang out with him at GP New Jersey, and that was terrific.
Yeah, there you go. And he also worked on World of Warcraft stuff. And has a memorial to Christopher
NPC,
Rush,
I think, yeah,
in the game where he is a lotus farmer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Calling back to the Black Lotus.
Very sweet.
All right. Well, I believe I have an idea of Aaron. What was your number 9?
Seth MacKinnon.
Seth MacKinnon. Very nice. And so I believe I know what your number 2 is, because it's my number 1. An artist who needs no real introduction, and honestly, all of our artists don't necessarily need introductions anyway. But it's a lot funner when you just look behind Aaron and you go, man, that's some incredible work you got there. 316 cards by John Avon. I know. Look, and I think there is some bias here, and I don't care because it's my list to do what I want. But I love John Avon. The guy himself is cool. His agent is absolutely fantastic. He's been amazing to work with. He was always fantastic at shows, giving it his all. And, in his art, I mean, do I really need to start explaining how good John Avon is?
Kickstarter.
I mean, the Kickstarter went absolutely nutso, and I'm super happy for him, which is great. I mean, from the most mundane objects, of the evolution charms or whatever, to the full art lands, the one to bring us some of the most gorgeous land artwork ever, can still do things like Aura Flux, which from Urza's Legacy, I believe.
That art is something else too.
Yeah, is fantastic. I can go on about John's landscape artwork, which I really think is the focus. I love his pieces, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about those lands that just kind of takes your breath away. That island from Unhinged was just it's just incredible. It was on a different
Dredge
level.
player, he gave us Barbarian Ring, he gave us Cabal Pit, Dakmor Salvage, Cephalid Coliseum, all the hits, you are a fixture of every deck I play, and I thank you for that. And it's always nice to see, the outpouring of support. Sometimes Kickstarters launch and you're like, oh no, this could go one of two ways, and I think we all knew it was going to hit its goal, but to see the outpouring of support and to see it just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that's what he deserves, quite frankly. And so, my heart was swelling with joy to see how successful that was, because he deserved every single bit of it, and I hope he knows how much we love him. And yeah,
when Unstable said they're going to have full art lands, you knew it was Avon. You just knew it. There wasn't even a question. It wasn't even who's going to do it. No, you know who's going to do it. It's just how they're going to do it with him. Because, I mean, again, Avon is just absolutely incredible. Super amazing artist. Super great guy. Incredible to the fans.
My number 2.
And your number 2 and my number 1.
Yeah.
So, and his most recent land, I'm looking through my deck here, my Atali Brawl deck here, because he did the promotional version of Zalfar Void from Dominaria.
Wow.
Speaking of spectacular lands, yet another notch in the belt of an already fabulous career.
Man, so that was our top 10 MTG artists. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what artist we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. Before we go, I want to thank
I expect a lot of comments.
Please talk, defend your favorite artist. Tell us who we were not talking about. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. And thanks to the artists of Magic, because the game isn't the same without your skill and expertise. Most of the card we don't focus on it during play. We don't necessarily focus on it during our show, but it's most of Magic. It is literally most of the real estate of Magic, and without it, it's just kind of numbers and words, which are fine, but you definitely it's something else. It's what brought most people to the game.
It breathes life into what we do in terms of the game, which is awesome. Moving here to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHorder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching or listening, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com, follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.